I'm here at the Irish Embassy in Berlin, and my guest is Colm Bairead, writer and director of the film The Quiet Girl. Before we start, I just have to do a big shout out to Danny O'Reilly from my favorite Irish band, The Coronas, because he helped me pronounce your name correctly just last week.
Oh wow, okay, very good.
So before we dive deeper into your film, can you just tell me in your own words, in just a few words, what the film is about?
So as the title suggests, it's a film that has a young girl at the heart of it. It's a young girl called Coit who comes from an impoverished rural family that's overcrowded, and her mother is pregnant with another child. And as the summer approaches, the decision is made to send her away to ease the burden on her own family to live with this childless middle-aged couple. And really the film becomes an examination of the relationship that forms between this young girl and this couple.
The Quiet Girl is Ireland's first submission for Best International Feature.
Well, not the first submission. We would have submitted other films, but it's the first time we've been nominated.
I see.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
That was incredible. You know, for an Irish film to receive an Oscar nomination is extraordinary. For an Irish language film to receive an Oscar nomination was history making. It's a moment that's gone down in history. So it's something we're very proud of, and myself as an Irish speaker, for whom the language has been a part of me all my life. It's been a very proud moment.
In June, I just talked to your fellow Irish director Declan Rex, whose wonderful film Tarek was screened at the Film Fest M not, just where your film was shown also. And he told me about some kind of funding that you, if I get it right, you get automatically if you do a film in the Irish language.
Yeah, well, it's not that it's quite automatic. There's still a sort of a competitive element to it, I suppose. There is funding available for Irish language feature films now since 2017. There was a particular scheme set up called Cine 4, and that scheme aims to produce 2 Irish language feature films roughly every year. And that was a huge moment in terms of our national cinema, that this funding was suddenly available, because historically Irish language films haven't been part of our output as a filmmaking nation. I think prior to 2017 there were maybe 5 Irish language feature films that had ever been in the cinema in Ireland, released theatrically in the history of cinema. And yet it's our national language, it's the official language of our state, and it's everyone in Ireland, it's a mandatory subject in school, so it's part of us. Even though it's still a minority language, not that many people are entirely fluent in it, it's still a key part of our cultural identity. So it's wonderful now that there's been this financial backing to realise a form of national cinema that's inclusive of our indigenous language.
Okay, let's get back to your film. It's based on the short story Foster by Irish writer Claire Keegan. How does the story come to you in the first place?
I read an article in the Irish Times in late spring, early summer 2018, and it was an article, it was the 10 best works of Irish literature written by female authors this century. And I was just looking through the list to see which I had read. I'd read some of them, not all of them, and but Foster was on this list by Claire Keegan. And I hadn't read it, but I was aware of it, because it had been published a few years prior to that, to much acclaim. And for whatever reason, I just decided to buy that particular work that day, and I read it. And it's quite slim, as you say. It's a short story. Claire likes to call it a long short story. It's not quite a novella, but not quite a short story. It's in the middle. And I don't know, it took me like maybe 45 minutes, an hour to read. And when I got to the end, I was in tears. I'd just been so moved by it. And I could see, as I was reading it, I could see a film taking shape in my mind. And I could also crucially see how you could tell this story in the Irish language. Because the action of the film takes place essentially on 2 farms. And if you go looking for the Irish language in Ireland, where it's a spoken language, amongst the community, those communities are almost exclusively rural. So I could see very easily how you could transplant that story in an authentic way into an Irish language setting.
And was Claire Keegan in some point, or at any point, involved in the making of the film?
Claire was incredibly gracious, actually. Claire, once I had to write a letter, a kind of a love letter in a way to Claire, telling her how much I loved all of her work, but in particular this story, Foster. And she, to our eternal gratitude, she allowed us the right to adapt it. But she was, as I say, she was incredibly gracious, because she said to me, look, this is your story now, in a sense. You need to take it and do with it what you must in order for it to work in your medium. And she never insisted on knowing who was being cast or seeing drafts of the screenplay. She was incredibly trusting, I suppose. And yeah, we'll always be very grateful to her for that.
Everything we see or hear is filtered through the perception of this young girl, which is played wonderfully by Catherine Clinch. Throughout the film, I had the feeling that she's fully aware of what her character would feel at certain points. How did you achieve that with someone so young?
The reality is, as you just stated, that she was incredibly aware of how she would feel. The reality is that she was incredibly aware, because she has within herself this extraordinary emotional intelligence. And from the very first self-tape, the first time I encountered her was on a self-tape, it was clear that she had this innate understanding of this character, and the openness and the willingness to inhabit her. So really, it was only ever minor adjustments with Catherine. And I would say, if you were to look back on the script supervisor's notes, she had the least amount of takes of any of the cast, because she was just consistently inhabiting this character in a way that felt so truthful. She's just, I think, an extraordinary talent.
Absolutely. You also use a quite unusual aspect ratio for the film. So then I kind of have the feeling that there's more to it than... can you shine a little light on why you didn't use the standard?
Sure, yeah. So the aspect ratio of the film is, technically it's 1.37 to 1, which is called the Academy ratio. I guess it's kind of close to what would have been 4:3, like the old TV sets. And really our decision to do that, there were several kind of reasons behind it, but the primary one was that the film is trying to inhabit this particular point of view, this young girl's consciousness in a way. And we felt that because she hasn't fully figured the world out yet, that there was something about this more constrained image that felt sort of truthful to that point of view, that there are things like just outside of the frame that are in a way beyond her comprehension or just out of reach. So there was something about that felt quite apt to us. And then also, like the shape of it for the audience is sort of redolent of a time that's passed, It almost belongs to a sense of memory, which to me the film also, there is a reading of the film, I believe, that allows for the idea that this is something that Caught yourself is reflecting upon, with the benefit of hindsight, with a kind of adult acuity, an understanding of what that summer meant, and what these small moments that are sort of objectively mundane in one way, that they actually have great meaning, and effect and resonance. So so they were the primary motivations behind that.
That's very lovely. Thank you very much for the interview, and I hope that everyone will see this beautiful film.
Thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you.